So the lines between code and content are blurring. Did you know that you can use large language models to create a 3D city simulation inside your browser, annotate videos inside of Adobe After Effects, and pick the best video takes for both energy and performance? We've got a bunch of new model upgrades lately, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, and even Grok. And in this video, I'm diving into the content creation superpowers they unlock for you. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the city block simulation I made inside of Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Basically, I've got this orbiting camera view of an intersection, and as you can see, there's a bunch of cars, there's traffic lights, there's like people walking around. I can follow all the vehicles. I've got this nice little corner view, and as you notice, there is a traffic system where these cars are, for the most part, avoiding each other. I can switch to a corner view, a nice little cinematic view, and even a top-down view. And the wildest thing is I made this entirely inside of Claude with prompts. I did not use a 3D application. I did not upload any assets. This is all prompt engineering. Now, Claude's already been able to do this, but with Claude 3.7 Sonnet, they get this new extended feature, which is basically their version of chain of thought thinking, sort of like DeepSeek R1 or ChatGPT's O1 Pro or O3 Mini. A lot of people, when they open up something like Cursor or some other IDE or coding editor, they run into this issue where they're just extremely frustrated. And so unless you know your way around code, let me make things a little bit simpler for you. So when I start with an idea that I want to build, I start at the highest level possible. So I say, hey, our goal is to create this beautiful crowd and traffic simulation in one city block in a downtown neighborhood. Hey, we're going to use P5.js or 3.js or whatever else we want to create this beautiful Claude artifact. It's basically a web view inside of Claude where you can get a preview of real code right inside your browser. You don't have to download Cursor. You don't need to deal with an IDE, anything. And so what I told it really is quite simple. It's like, hey, I wanted to check out the capabilities of Claude. I want to create this 15 to 20 second clip that I'm going to share on social media to showcase your capabilities, even saying funny things like, yo, it's got to be very eye-catching. And then really outlining that we want to focus on the rules that govern the simulation. Let's make sure like these crosswalks over here actually traverse the streets, that people largely walk on the sidewalks, cars only drive within the streets. And then let's layer in a rough traffic system, right? That has a time basis for signals changing to circulate traffic through this world. And really take a second to think about how you create this multi-agent system where you've got these different agents, like these cars, these people, the traffic system itself, and all of that needs to work in concert. But here's the real trick. A lot of people will just go try to one-shot something like this and then start iterating immediately. Since we've got this thinking functionality, and even if you're using other models, what I like to tell these systems is, hey, I want you to put your senior product manager hat on, and I want you to think about what we're building, why we're building it, and how can we best accomplish the thing that we aim to achieve? Look, I come from a product management background, and so this is very second nature to me, but you'd be surprised how much of a difference this makes. And so once you encourage these models to think about the problem space, opportunity space, maybe put their thoughts in a two-pager or PRD, you'll get something like this. So we've got the problem space. It's talking about the technical feasibilities. It needs to be 15 to 25 seconds to capture attention. We need multi-agent coordination. I just talked about this. And we need some sort of believable movement patterns, right? And there's environmental rules and signal systems. So basically all the other agents need to be able to tell, and perceive those signals, right? And understand that, hey, it's green, I can go now, et cetera. So there's communication happening between the agents. And so it's talking about the technical showcase, visual impact, all these other things. We're going to stick to this low poly aesthetic, perspective, motion design, scene composition. And the cool thing about this is, before it's generated any code, we can now tell the system, hey, actually, I want you to have a more photorealistic aesthetic, or hey, we're trying to replicate a nighttime scene, so I want all the windows glowing, etc. So once we've got our PRD or specification, whether that's something you write collaboratively with a system or give it yourself, what I'd like to do is ask it to take the role of the tech lead, the engineering lead on this project, and be like, hey, what do you recommend that we do? And so it's saying, yeah, let's go with 3.js. We're going to have this like fixed isometric view to start. We're going to start with this like very core agent system, on and on it goes. I'm still not going to have it generate any code yet. What I'm going to say is, okay, let's go into the next level of detail and start planning the implementation broken up into iterative chunks of this Claude artifact. Basically asking it to balance, layer, and sequence different functionality. And what this does is it really has the model take a step back and think about balancing the functionality we're going to build in these various iterations of a Claude artifact, including sequencing, right? There are certain things that you want to implement sooner that are the solid foundation you build on and things that can come later. And again, just in the right order to maximize our goals, and goals have already been specified. So then I'll get something like this, where, hey, in chunk one, we're going to get our environment set up, then the traffic system, the vehicle system, pedestrian systems, so on and so forth. Now, at this point, when we've got a pretty good, let's say, roadmap of what we're about to build and kind of what we're going to do in each of these sprints that is going to culminate in a nice Claude artifact, we can get into it. And so this is the first thing I got. As you can see, there's a lot of like Z-depth fighting over here. The crosswalks are absolutely not in the correct location. I've got this like weird X in the middle, which would be funny if I was using Grok to make this, but I'm not. And it's got this baseline lighting system and a very simple camera move. So what I'd like to do here is start doing annotations. So I'll do a screenshot and basically tell it, hey, the crosswalks need to be over here. And I find this is very easy to do compared to describing everything in words. Now, of course, this is going to tokenize everything and understand it, which is totally fine. But this is just a little bit easier to communicate things. And along with it, I included a very short note. Hey, the streets are flickering. Crosswalks need to be oriented. And hey, please look at my annotation. Next thing you know, I got something like this. Pretty cool. Already the Z-depth fighting is fixed. We've got the crosswalks in the right place. But we've still got this weird X in the middle. So then what I do is basically give it a couple of different screenshots of the scene itself. It wasn't able to remove the X right out the gate. And then this is what I like to do again is like, hey, look, here's some new viewport renders for you. Can we please inspect this together? And now you're a world-class set designer, right? Figure out how you can optimize the city layout and this intersection. Let's explore a bunch of options and then inspect and prune them down to 80-20. 80-20, the Pareto principle basically being like, can we pick the 20% of things that are going to have like 80% of the visual impact in this case? And so it identified a bunch of interesting concerns over here, the positioning of the light placement, the road layout concerns, the intersection texture problem, etc. Okay, and there we go. Finally, we've got a good set. Now, once we've got the set in setting, we can start layering in the agentic systems on top of that. So as you can see here, when it's thinking through the traffic system, it's going through this plan like, hey, I got to add like red, yellow, green lights. There needs to be, essentially a finite state machine, if you're familiar with that, which transitions between all of the states. And so now we have a traffic system, but of course we can't really test it without having people in it. I spent 6 years at Google, and in Google, we call this like sort of the holy trinity, is sort of the product manager, the engineering manager, and the designer. If the PM, TL, and UX folks are in synchronization, then you've got the holy trinity and everything's magical. So I like to bring those into my prompts as well. So you'll notice in the chain of thought over here, it'll bring in the PM perspective, the priority features, the technical leadership perspective, and the design perspective. So very important things like density of agents, et cetera. And so that saves you the effort of having to expound on those things manually. So the way I like to think about chain of thought is it's basically collapsing a bunch of prompts that a talented prompt engineer may give to an AI system. It's collapsing that behind the scenes and just doing it for you effectively. And so with all of that in mind, they came up with this interesting plan and asked me, hey, do you want to change anything? I said, very, very well reasoned, and boom. We started getting something like this. And as you can see, it's still kind of cool. Hey, we got people, but oh my God, like the cars aren't oriented correctly, as you can probably see. They're like going sideways and a bunch of other funny stuff, right? But we've got the bones in there. As we like to say, you got to ship and iterate. And of course, in the middle, you've got this like chaotic mess, like so of course I point out all those issues, and then just with a couple more iterations, here's where I ended up. So effectively in 30 minutes, I was able to do a project that would have probably taken me a week because, hey, I know a little bit of front-end code, but I'm not like the maestro at Three.js, and I certainly haven't coded like multi-agent systems since college. And so that would be a lot to brush up on, but now you can crank it out without knowing a lick of code, right? That's the crazy part. What you really need is product thinking and systems thinking. And if you can build both of those abilities, which you're probably a content creator, you probably have that because the content is your product, or the game or the experience you're building is your product. And systems thinking, you're probably constructing systems already to execute what you do, especially if you're using like 3D and VFX tools. It's just a very slight reframing of the language, and you can start making very cool things like this. Along the way, I added all that other functionality to change the various camera systems. Now think about it. Imagine taking this video and tossing it into Runway's video to video. You could suddenly start like prototyping a scene very quickly and then reskin it with a bunch of the video to video stuff we talked about in the past. Really, really a ton of potential. And it's so much fun. It's almost like bypassing you even needing to open Blender. And as we'll get to in a future video, these capabilities are going to come to 3D tools directly, so you can do exactly what we're doing here, but inside of like a Blender, Cinema 4D, Maya, etc. Quickly to show you a few other cool things that you can do is like, let's say you're thinking about like a 360 camera system and you want to make this sort of visualization. So this is like a top-down view of an 8-lens camera system, the various field of view, the frustum lengths, how much overlap is there between each of these cameras? What does it look like from a single lens perspective? And you're kind of like changing that up very easily. And what does the overlap look like? And hey, when you stitch this thing together into like a 360 video, which camera view is going to show up in which part of the equirectangular sphere? It's kind of fun, right? Like this isn't perfect. There's a lot more tweaking I could have done here. But what I'm trying to illustrate to you is that without knowing code, you can create artifacts that are either effectively content, like in this case, or helping you make content. Now, another interesting way that you can think about using Claude artifacts is sort of like throwaway stuff. So let's say that we're planning out a video. It's like, hey, we're creating a 30-second short. Let's make a shot list, 3 to 5 seconds each for a UFO spaceship landing in the middle of a ranch in Texas. The farmer is bewildered and comes out to see 3 aliens outside his bar. You know, just the usual stuff. And so let's just have it come up with a shot list. And here I'm just going to turn on extended thinking because I want to use it for the thing I want to show you subsequently. So here you can see it sort of going through its internal chain of thought, and it's going to create this nice little shot list. Now, what you might typically do is like, I'm going to toss this into Notion. Maybe you have like a little sheet set up for keeping track of all your shots and all of that. But what if you just say, hey, create a Claude artifact that I can use to build and maintain this shot list for my video project. I should be able to add and move shots around simply by dragging. I should be able to select the type of camera angle for each using a drop down. And I should be able to check off shots as they're done. And hey, please bring some like 10x design flair and product chops to the mix. And so you can see that it's going to now start coding up basically this throwaway shot list manager for me. And you can, of course, templatize this. You can imagine moving this into something like Cursor or maybe even publishing this artifact and using it consistently. But the point I want to make is that in this new world, think of code and content sort of like this. You can build this stuff on the fly. It doesn't have to be this like methodical heavy lifting thing where you go into like coding mode right as you're going through jamming with this LLM, right? Maybe you're dropping a bunch of images into the mix and figuring, hey, I have this shot in mind over here. What about this? Maybe you're doing some voice dictations to just like nail down the shot list first. And then now you've got the shot list manager, right? And of course, this lets you add shots too. And it's very cool. Like you can edit and choose like what kind of camera angle it is. You can change the description over here, save it. I can move things around very easily. I can check things off and do it all inside of Claude. And so if you've seen my previous video about sort of getting into that flow state where you're doing everything possible in fewer places, this is one way to do that. So you don't have to jump and change context between Claude and Notion and do all of these things. And heck, if you wanted to make like a Notion export for posterity so you get some really clean markdown that you could paste into whatever it is you use, that works too. But really take a moment to think about what are the kind of software or code artifacts that you might need to make your creative life easier, and use Claude to do stuff like that. Now, here's just one more example that I wanted to show you is like, let's say, for example, I wanted to make this for a After Effects piece or a music video visualizer, etc. I was very quickly able to code up this Hypercube or Tesseract visualizer. It's got different color modes inside of it. I can toggle animation. I can toggle the projection style. And honestly, if I'm trying to do something quick for social media, it may be worth just screen capturing this and using it as an asset, right? For like an intro animation or an interstitial or whatever it is, rather than opening up Blender, Maya, Cinema 4D and going through all the pain and effort of doing that, especially if you're short on time. And so really my point here is the line between software and content will continue to blur. This is a similar Hypercube visualizer that I made previously with ChatGPT 4.0 with their Canvas feature. And it's really, really magical, right? Now, look, if you want to go crazy, you can absolutely take these things to the next level, but that will require you jumping into a code editor. Peter Levels knows how to code, but he doesn't know jack about 3D. So this is the first time he's building something in 3JS. Just using AI tools to create a multiplayer flight simulator in Three.js. And it has like 2,000 people concurrently playing it online. So really the point is that the lines between software and content will continue to blur. And if there's like 2 points I'm trying to impress on you, one is that this is way faster than doing it the good old fashioned way. The second thing is that you don't need to be a coder to take advantage of it. Like you can use large language models for more than note summarization and writing out awful bullet pointed emails. And this is just scratching the surface, right? If you went down these rabbit holes, you could suddenly start making plugins for the existing tools that we use. And speaking of the lines between content and code blurring, probably one of the most slept on applications by creatives is AI Studio, because everyone just writes it off as like this developer tool, and it is far from that. What also people don't realize is like Google's literally giving away access to all of their best models, like even the thinking models that OpenAI is like paywalling and only now thinking about opening up because DeepSeek's giving them competition. Google's been making that stuff available for free with very generous usage caps. By the way, in this mode, if you do use it without an API key, it's going to end up being able to train on your data, but so is ChatGPT or a bunch of the other large language models. If you want to opt out of that, you have to go get a paid API key. But here's the wild part. The usage inside of AI Studio is still free and they won't train on it. And trust me, I've gone down the terms of service. I've talked to Logan specifically about it. I actually asked him to clarify this change to this terms of service, and they've made that change now, which is freaking awesome. So this is the best way to play with state-of-the-art models if you don't want to deal with a monthly subscription. But I'll do even better. You can upload multiple video, audio, image, everything into one single chat and ask questions over it because you have a 2 million token context window. One of the other amazing things is you've got these safety settings. So for example, with ChatGPT, or even if you're using like the Google Gemini app standalone, there's a trust and safety layer, right? About things you can say, can't say. They're trying to make this like good experience for all consumers. You might be making a freaking action movie that involves a lot of like guns and explosions and things like that. And for that context, you can crank down a bunch of these different things and have control over how the system can respond to you. What's also cool is inside this, you can do grounding with Google Search. So it'll do a Google search query and pull in relevant information into context to give you a more accurate response. And you can do this all in this amazing interface. All the files get saved to Drive. I think people are just sleeping on it. Like for example, I dropped in a file here and I basically said, hey, generate bullet points for the video. And I just want to know like, what are the key moments in this video, right? And here you go. I've got all of the key moments, a beautiful JSON file, but also all of the timestamped key moments that I could type into or paste into my YouTube description. So this is how I create my preliminary chapters. And what's wild is, unlike ChatGPT, where you may toss in your Premiere or whatever transcript into it, rather than using the transcript to figure out what the key moments out, these models are multimodal in and out. Multimodal in meaning it's actually reasoning over the visuals and the audio. And so it's looking at 1 frame per second on the video side and actually like the entirety of the audio and reasoning over it. So you'll find much better semantically meaningful chapters that you end up with. There's so much other cool stuff that you can do. So if you want to do things like semantic detection, you can play with that stuff too. Like bounding box detections are super easy. Boom. So here's all the things that it detected and you got this nice interactive view to look at it. What you can also do, and this is still an early feature, instead of just a 2D rectangular bounding box, you've got a 3D bounding box of where it thinks these different objects are. And they give you this FOV slider because it's not perfect, so you can kind of play with it a little bit. So like the remote control is clearly off here. Let's see how it does with the pumpkins over here. Much better job, not perfect by any means whatsoever. Here, if I futz with a field of view a little bit, it's looking good. And so again, this is a sign of what's to come, but the fact that you can do this and you just get like a really good JSON, you can toss this into something like After Effects, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, another feature you may have come across is talking with Gemini Live. So basically you can share your screen, use your camera phone. Like, by the way, this is a web app. They don't have a standalone app, but you can use that just in Safari or Chrome, whatever it is you're using on your smartphone. And basically, you can talk to Gemini, show it your context either through the camera or through the video and ask it questions. So let's say you're stepping through like a Premiere effect that you're trying to do for the first time and you turn on grounding with Google search, it will literally do the search for you on the fly, find that right tutorial and give you that answer in line, in context. It's absolutely mind-blowing. definitely try playing with this because there's so much potential for where this can go as like an assistive co-pilot tool. But really what I want to talk about is all these amazing models that Gemini gives you access to. So one of the things I wanted to experiment with Gemini was like, hey, look, I want to create those like really fancy HUD overlays that you see inside of like shooting matches where it keeps track of like your split time, how many shots did you take, how many shots did you miss. And so this is me with my buddy in a place called Staccato Ranch. So where like John Wick's like gun is made and a bunch of professional training happens. So basically you're going around. And so there's like cool things here. I've got two POVs. One is the shooter POV because I've got Meta Ray-Ban glasses on. And then I've got the observer POV because my buddy also has a pair of Meta glasses. And you can see like we've got this synchronized video.
Yes. Let me just. Oh no.
It's okay. The video cuts off, right?
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do is create a HUD from that. And turns out I was absolutely able to do that. So I basically dropped the video in and effectively said that, hey, the left is the observer POV, right is the shooter POV. I want you to analyze this video of a shooting drill. And for every shot fired, provide the following in a JSON format. And by the way, if you don't know anything about like JavaScript object notation, you don't even need to. You can just have the AI write the prompt for you too. But I give it some examples. And then here's what happened. So here's the thinking model. It's like literally stepping through everything and reasoning about what happens and gave me the output, along with, by the way, the target color of the thing that I hit. Now, again, this is not perfect, but how easy is it for you to spot check this and be like, oh yeah, that one's actually this one's actually that, and you can kind of fix these errors. But because again, right now, Gemini's reasoning about your video at 1 FPS. And so here's what I mean. Like there's clearly a miss here in this other video. I crushed it in that last video, but in this video I'm going to show you, I wanted to have a miss in there to see if it could fix it. And so as I told it to fix those things, it'll highlight that for you. And then effectively I said, hey, look, can you actually take these timestamps and put it in a format that I can drop into After Effects, essentially as like an expression, right? And I kind of gave it a rough example that I got from another chat that I did with Gemini to tell me how I should go about doing this, because I'm not that great with After Effects expressions. And so once I got that, I just went into After Effects. I literally created an empty text layer, pasted this in, and suddenly, voila, this is the result that I got. And by the way, if you try doing this, if you run into any kind of timing offset issues, you can just figure out the exact offset and ask it to apply all the various videos. And so here you can see, let me just switch to the full screen of this. It does a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but again, the fact that I was able to get this so quickly without doing any manual work. There you go, I caught the miss there. It overcounted slightly, but boom, crushing it.
Ooh, we got a few left. Yo! Nice. Sick. That was fun.
And so, yeah, that is a lot of fun. And so think about how many cool things you could do. There's so many other examples you could try. Like imagine like using your glasses or a GoPro and like going out and doing some sort of construction site evaluation, right? And then you're having it annotate all the observations for you. Or maybe you're doing a workout and you have the camera just recording you. And 1 FPS is enough to be like, hey, I want you to count all my reps, the weights that I did, the exercises that I did, and just like write up everything for me. There's so many cool things that you can play around with. Once you have the ability to drop in video files and then talk over it like this. And there's nothing else quite like it. Like ChatGPT has this like live video mode and this like weird desktop voice mode, but they still don't let you screen share at the moment. Now, another cool way that I like using it is like in one of my last videos, let's say you've done 3 different takes, right? And you want to effectively have the model tell you, hey, which was the most energetic take to consider? I have a very simple process for that. Basically, I'll tell it, hey, you're a world-class expert at editing and packaging these kind of long-form videos. I want you to just start by transcribing these takes that I made. So it'll make a transcription. That'll let me see what the visual differences are. And then I'll say is like, which take do you like most for this video and why? Which one would drive the highest view through rates? And critically, I'll tell it to analyze both the audio and the transcript. And then here, as you can see, it's like even in reasoning about the video itself, like why was I opening the Diet Coke? Is that cool? That's actually like shifting the focus away. I thought it'd be kind of cool to like crack open a Diet Coke. And it made a good point, like, yo, let's just get into the content. and said that pointing at the camera is far more like, a stronger and more effective hook for a YouTube video. Now, again, this is just advice, right? Like you can take this advice, right, for consideration or give it your counter feedback and reason and talk to it a little bit and see if it's like justification actually holds up. Sometimes it'll change an opinion, other times it won't. And now you can use all these crazy cool Flash thinking models and the Gemini 2.0 Pro models to do all this really, really cool stuff. And by the way, they have a far more recent knowledge cutoff too, but again, who cares? Because you can ground it with search if you really care about that. You also get these dials like temperature, basically like a higher temperature lets it be more creative and will hallucinate perhaps a little bit more, which again can be a feature, not a bug, depending on your context. Or you can crank it down if you wanted to be super factually accurate. So yeah, I love doing this stuff. I mean, there's just so many cool things you can do. I've dropped in this is a 55-minute video that I dropped in and I said, hey, I want you to just annotate every single landmark that happens. I want you to summarize the rough sequence of events for this whole video. And it basically told me, it's like, hey, we're on Embarcadero, going to Lombard, Russian Hill, Ghirardelli Square, on it goes, right? And so imagine taking this kind of model and having it compute this sort of description of every single video and then making that searchable. There's a bunch of startups working on cool things on those lines. They were roughly called video intelligence startups. And so you probably heard about 11 labs. Go check out 12 labs if that type of stuff is of interest to you. So one of the other cool things I tried doing with it is helping me prepare for this keynote talk that I gave at Vimeo Reframe. So basically what I did is I dropped in an audio recording of my dry run, just using the Voice Notes app. And then I dumped in the PDF export of my slides as well, which had the speaker notes in it. So now it has the visuals, it has the speaker notes, and now it has my audio file to kind of reconcile all of it. And it gave me really, really good feedback down to the slide and timestamp. So literally, hey, on slide 7 at this part, you should do this. Emphasize this little bit over here. You're doing too many filler words over here. I don't think you really enunciated the decade and year to talk about how much progress is happening. The kind of stuff a professional TED speaking coach or TED curator would give you. And I know a little bit about that too, because guess who's the technology curator for TED 2025 and TED Next? It's your boy. So then I took its feedback, made some of those changes, recorded another audio file and gave it to it. And it's it picked up on all the changes that I made and gave me just the last bit of refinement feedback. It's absolutely wild, right? Basically on the fly, I have a model that in 60 seconds listens to my 25-minute talk and gives me detailed feedback and is far more attentive than I would argue most humans would be. So where these models do hallucinate a little bit, the fact that they can rather reliably reason over very long chunks of audio, video, and text data is absolutely mind-blowing. And as a creative, you should be using it in your workflow. Now, I know what you're probably thinking is couldn't you have done this with ChatGPT advanced voice mode or done it with Grok's new voice mode? Here's the thing. Those things are really designed for back and forth interaction. If you're doing a recording and then you want to give it a bunch of feedback, you want to give it the context of the PDF and the slides, I don't think there's any other way to do this today other than building your own custom app or just frickin' using AI Studio for free. And look, for talks like this is already going to be in the public domain. They're probably going to train on it anyway. I try not to stress about it too much. Heck, if you're uploading content to YouTube, that's being trained on anyway as well. So I'd suggest that you take advantage of this amazing ability to use a lot of Google's models for free while you can. So one of the other things I spent last year doing is hosting the TED AI show, which you can check out. We've got 25 amazing episodes. And for that, for promotional stuff, right? I could just drop in my whole hour-long interview. In this case, I think this is one with the chief science officer of Hugging Face. And basically saying, hey, look, help me identify the top 10 moments with the highest potential for virality and curiosity. And I'll kind of give you the answer right out here. And what I like to do again for these models is giving them an example for what I'm kind of looking for in their response, along with some important notes. And it gave me 10 really great selections. Then I can pass this along to the team. We sub-select a few of them, and those are the ones that get posted, right? And what's also cool is if you're familiar with tools like Opus Clips, where you can drop in your video and you'll get this scored version of really good snippets, they're actually using Gemini Flash under the hood. And now think about it, rather than using their application for free, you get far more direct access and you can give all this additional context of other audio recordings, other video recordings or PDFs or whatever. I think that's kind of mind-blowing. And it's really, really fast too. And so really Opus Clips clip anything feature would not be plausible without Gemini 1.5 Flash, because basically in a contrast, what you have to end up doing with something like GPT-4o is you essentially break it up into frames and you're kind of like tossing a bunch of frames into the mix rather than natively being able to reason over video like Gemini can. Now, if you are willing to pay for their paid tier, one of the things I want to talk about is deep research. And so there's a bunch of different deep research tools out there. You can use Perplexity if you like that. ChatGPT has their own one. They recently made it available on the Plus and the Team tier as well, but I think you only get like 10 a month versus the $200 plan gives you like 100 a month. But over here, they've got all the models that we talked about, right? Including you can actually go reason across YouTube, Maps, and Search, which is pretty cool for like travel planning and things like that. But for creators, deep research, I think is a godsend, right? And so to give you an example, like let's say I want a detailed rundown of all these different models, how they fare, who's the best at coding, who's the best at multimodal, and what's the best model combo and why. The cool thing I like about Gemini's approach is it'll initially say that, hey, look, here's the plan I've come up with, and you can hit edit plan and tell it, hey, I actually want you to research this thing as well, and here's another point that I care about, and then you kick it off. And this is the wild part to me. Like Google's search index is freaking insane. I can't even tell you how good it is. Like they are constantly mapping and remapping the digital world. Just like Google Maps is mapping the physical world, Google Search is creating a self-healing map of the digital world. So it literally already is looking at 46 freaking websites. And I've seen this number go up to like 200, 300 different sources that it's thinking about. And it really does take its time because it's still using 1.5 Pro, which is sort of the beefier, slower model compared to 2.0 Flash. And so it'll go look over like all these sources, including YouTube videos, as you can see, right? Like it's looking at Amazon reviews. It's looking at computer vision websites that I love going to, RoboFlow, for example. It's looking at N8N, which is maybe the subject of a future video we should do. And on it goes, right? Like Cursor forums, Anthropic, Amazon, just all Tom's Guide all across the board, including official blogs as well, right? And so you're really condensing down like a couple days, if not a week of research into a 30-minute query. And that's kind of wild. And so at the end of the day, you're going to get this really detailed report. And what I particularly love about it is I can hit one button to open it up in Google Docs. And so boom, I've got a very nicely chaptered report that you might have assigned to an analyst with citations so you can go do your research better. So I actually am a little bit worried about this because I've got a feeling a lot of folks are going to start setting up like, I don't know, automation channels using this and deepfakes, but y'all are smart at figuring out the wheat from the chaff. So I'm not too worried about that, but undoubtedly you are going to see an explosion of sort of bot content like this. So I've covered DeepSeek in another video, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, but you get the gist. Now, one last cool thing that I'll say is like, and this resonated clearly with a lot of you, is basically one of the ways I've been expanding my knowledge base, reading up on new topics. Like this AI space feels almost like exhausting. There's just so much happening and new techniques and technologies. And I've been seeped in this space for like the past decade. And I'm also feeling like, holy crap, this is getting way too fast. And one of the ways that I basically reduce the noise and increase the signal is actually by using these large language models. And so it's like, the way I'd put it is like, yo, I literally find 10 new rabbit holes to go down every week. And so, yeah, like you can use Perplexity, but I also love using deep research. And recently, since I've been trialing the new $200 plan for ChatGPT using deep research there too, I'll get this like 17-page like detailed summary. And the beauty thing is, since there are citations, I'll always get primary and secondary sources to jump to: books, blogs, interviews, papers. Like, oh, it cited this YouTube video. Let me go watch that YouTube video. Oh, it's a podcast. Let me save that for later. Oh, here's a book that it's citing. Let me save that. Or here's a Substack, etc. It helps you discover new sources of information. But the real beauty is just tossing it into NotebookLM. So I was trying to understand this like a really cool population dynamics model, and basically just like tossed in the paper a bunch of deep search research and had it create a 15-minute summary that I could listen to when I'm walking outside. So this workflow has been really, really fun for me, basically taking like 17 pages of information, then using NotebookLM to get the 15-minute version, and effectively getting a lay of the land before I dive into the material properly and then go deeper into, let's say, primary and secondary sources. And so I think it's really wild that we have access to these models that are really effectively a distillation of all documented human knowledge and creativity, and you can query it. So if you're a curious person, Like, what a time to be alive. You don't have to spend a week going down a rabbit hole. You can go down pretty deep into that rabbit hole in like an hour. Now, one other thing I'll say is like use voice notes. So if you're not doing this, where let's say you're fleshing out a concept for a video, like use the voice dictation capability in all of these apps, right? Like even if you're using iOS and you want to use Apple Intelligence, Apple Notes will now do the transcription for you. So I highly recommend you're walking around, like just empty your thoughts out into this voice note. It'll show up on a piece of paper, then you can organize it a little bit better. That's basically how I organize these videos. Like, so to just give you a very quick peek into how I'm doing things here behind the scenes, for this video, I actually use Grok, which we'll talk about next, and basically gave it my voice dictation and said, hey, can you just streamline the flow for me? And it just broke up everything into very nice bullet points. And I kind of have this as a reference for me here off on the left so that as I'm talking through things, I can be pithy and get you the information that you deserve without rambling forever. Now, I'm sure you could use this to like write a more detailed script and do all that type of stuff too, but this is just how I use it because I like to do the delivery off the cuff more organically. All right, so on that note, XAI. Now, I don't care what you think about Elon Musk, but I gotta say the dude effectively caught up. I would say the same kind of quality of personality that you get from Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I'm getting the same vibes with Grok 3, and like they basically caught up overnight, right? And like I think there's plenty of ink that's been spilled talking about how amazing of a job they did, etc. Now look, I've talked about this in the past. Elon's got his like confluence of companies that he's putting together, but really that synergy is visible when you think about what he's doing with the data centers, right? Like the fact that you can bring in a bunch of charging packs from Tesla and then have the engineers in the field like rewrite the firmware, that's the type of stuff that's allowed Elon to catch up. But focusing on the product itself and the XAI team, it's really, really freaking good. And predominantly because it's got deep search capabilities, including being able to pull from Twitter. So when you're doing very timely searches about very recent things, as you probably found that oftentimes the news will break on Twitter first. To give you an example in real time, one of the things that's hot right now is that turns out GPT 4.5 isn't as impressive as everyone thought. Like pre-training is effectively hitting a wall. So you're seeing a lot of folks talk about this stuff right now. And this is going to be a news article tomorrow, but if you want to get this answer today, the best place to get that is Grok, plus with the ability to go in and search all over the place as well. And so here's an example of like, I'm trying to figure out what laptop to buy, something I can travel with that has an NVIDIA GPU, and it gave me a really good rundown. So it's like, I can imagine this being really, really useful for people who make like review content, or if you're just trying to buy any kind of device. It's amazing. You'll get detailed charts. It's like somebody wrote a custom CNET article just for you based on your news, except you could reply back with audio saying, hey, I actually care about these things, not about these things. These are kind of softwares I'm trying to run. Oh, I'm like really care about running like Agisoft, Metashape, and Reality Capture, and After Effects or Premiere, or like Houdini, whatever. And it'll go like pull up that like Puget Systems article and look at their benchmarks and give you an answer. That's really, really mind boggling, right? And so that's like how I like to work with Grok these days. I'm just like piloting it because I'm already on a Plus subscription because Twitter is perhaps the de facto sort of AI platform, if you will. For at least that's where like a bunch of the folks that are in my community are very, very active. And so it's quite simple. Like you could do really great things with Grok itself. Now, of course, you can do all the obvious stuff too, right? Like I'm thinking about the thumbnail for this exact video. Like, what do you think about this? What should I add? Is the attention pretty good? Can you compare 2 or 3 different like thumbnails for me? These are all things that you can do, right? One thing I'll also encourage you to do is like, if you want to pick one model and stick to it, sure, do that. But the way I kind of view these models is they're good at different things, right? So if I'm dealing with longer context window and I want to reason over a couple different things, I'm probably going to end up using AI Studio and Gemini, right? But if I'm doing day-to-day stuff, like Claude is probably still my daily driver, though for the past week or so, I've started liking Grok 3 better, especially since Claude 3.7 ain't all that. But in many cases, for example, when you're doing like thumbnail cura, when you're trying to figure out how to do, but one of the other things that's kind of cool is you can view this as like polling a bunch of different colleagues or employees, right? Like, let's say you have an idea. You might go into a meeting and you want the thoughts of a couple of different people, all with different personalities, worldviews, etc. That's kind of how I view these large language models. Nomenclature aside, you could basically poll all of these folks like ChatGPT, Claude, etc., for the same question and say, hey, what do you think about this? And then you can see what they say. And oftentimes you'll notice they'll diverge. And that way you have the agency to then decide what you're actually going to go with. And that is no different than asking a bunch of real people for their opinions. They'll give you they'll give you their thoughts, and then you decide. So really how I think about it is kind of like this. You've got all these different tools that you like using, right? All of these different tools that are fun for you. Hume, NotebookLM, AI Studio, Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Anthropic. And you kind of view them like contractors effectively, right? Like you'll rotate people in and out. The teams are going to change based on the project at hand. You'll work with different folks. You'll get your ragtag team together. And so really this is how I think about these models versus being like, yes, I am in camp Gemini and ChatGPT and that's all I'm going to use. I'm not going to pay for any of the other subscriptions, etc. I think $20 a month for most of these models is like absolutely freaking worth it. And look, if you're a coding person, right, you might have a completely different stack, right? Like you might be doing, V0 for like your front end, UI design. You might be using Cursor as your primary IDE. You might be using Replit to make things easier to host online. And of course, still using Claude 3.5 or 3.7 Sonnet inside of Cursor. So the stack may differ, but really it's going to be a plurality of these tools that you'll use in concert. So to wrap things up, I encourage you to use every single model out there and go a layer deeper. Hopefully I've given you an idea of how you can start using them for all sorts of creative stuff, whether it's like, pre-production type tasks, whether it's actual asset creation, and do that with all of these multimodal LLMs, not just the image, video, and 3D stuff that we usually talk about on this channel. To fully circle back to vibe coding, if we think about vibe creation, I think this is how creative builders have always worked, right? Like it's this mix of technical skill and artistic intuition. You're kind of writing code and wrangling pixels and doing all this stuff. And it's come to a point where Rick Rubin himself has embraced this term. Shout out to Andrej Karpathy for formalizing this frickin' term. But really, that's how creatives operate. Like it's wu-wei, effortless action. And so I'm hoping that all these little tricks of being able to do a bunch of things within AI Studio itself, a bunch of things within Claude itself, where you're coming up with your shot list, how to reorganize it, creating visual artifacts, will allow you to get into that flow state rather than jumping between all these tools and only having a more exhausting list of tools to jump between. I call it the ill-tailored tapestry of tools that you have to deal with. On that note, maybe a future video that we need to touch on is how do you start weaving some of these tools together? So let's say you figured out a standard operating procedure. Now you want to use Claude in concert with Flux, in concert with Gemini for video transcription, and in context with a bunch of other models to accomplish a task. And you just want to be able to crank it, run that workflow like a cron job or something like that over and over again. Sadly, this is also the type of stuff that a lot of people would just paywall and try to make like a course out of it or something. And I really want to give this stuff away for free, but I do want something in return. If you found this valuable, please hit that like button, comment below, subscribe, and turn on that bell icon. It costs nothing and it helps me tremendously. That's it for Bilawal, and I will see y'all in the next one.